Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of the Bug Bounty course. Now, if you're a regular viewer to my channel, you might be thinking, wow, gee, this sounds familiar. And you'd be right, but I'm going to talk about how to make a note-taking system that works for you instead of just taking what other people have got that works for them and hoping it works for you. So I'm going to be talking today about the two different types of notes you're going to be taking while you're hacking and how to best set yourself up for success, no matter what system you use. I'm going to be as agnostic as possible, at least for the first half of this video, because you really can do note-taking with any application. You really don't need a full Notion database. You don't need a bunch of tools to get everything to go into one place. If you don't want to, you can literally just use paper, I promise. So with that in mind, we of course got to thank our lovely sponsor for this entire series, Bugcrowd. A great hacker needs a great platform, and Bugcrowd is the home of the hacker. They provide hackers with the best opportunities to make money, advance their skills, build community, and unleash ingenuity through their security knowledge platform. They provide distinctive educational content for hackers. You can rapidly pick up new skills through Bugcrowd University or gain practical experience with one of their many monthly challenges. Or maybe you want to follow real hacking experts like myself as we cover methodology, shortcuts, and tools. Bugcrowd has an entire level up series unique to the industry that covers all of that. So if you're interested in joining Bugcrowd, head over to bugcrowd.com/hackers now and join the Bugcrowd community. Thank you very much to Bugcrowd for sponsoring this video. So there are two main types of notes that you take while you're hacking. Notes while you're hacking and notes while you're learning things like new vulnerabilities. So notes you take when you're hacking have this really clear chaoticness about them. So you're trying to capture in these notes maybe IDs, maybe you're trying to capture cookies, maybe you've just got a list of URLs. They obviously mean something to you, but not so much to other people, and they're not really designed for other people. They're designed for you in that one time when you're hacking on a particular client. Now, notes when you're learning are a little bit different. So notes when you're learning really should be things that help you directly when you're hacking. And that's a little bit strange of a kind of, and the notes you'll take while you're learning. So notes while you're learning are really about developing a knowledge base and your understanding of different vulnerabilities. As you become more experienced and you find more bugs, you're also going to add to this your previous findings. And it's some of the best advice I ever got. So my process, I've talked about it a few times. I've done a video on Notion. I've done a video on Obsidian. So I originally used Notion, and you can see this combines the two. It combines the go hack something is client notes down here. And then the learn something new kind of is over here with your CTFs and your research. And I really do think it's important to take notes while you're learning. And that's for one really key reason. So I had done some GraphQL. I'd learned a little bit of GraphQL. And it was at an event that I found my first GraphQL endpoint ever. And it was only because I remembered the lessons I had learned from that CTF that I had done literally maybe a week, 2 weeks before, that I was actually able to find something on that GraphQL API. And I think this is why it's so important, because you really need your notes that you're taking now. Maybe even as you watch this video, you need them to become accessible to you, because when you find that GraphQL endpoint in the wild, you do not want to be relying on your memory. You want to have a really clear goal for, okay, I'm going to test for this and this. I'm going to test for access control, information disclosure. That is all I'm going to focus on. My next step is to do an introspection query. So I moved away from Notion, and there's a few reasons. One is that people had some really good points about whether or not it's appropriate because it doesn't have things like encryption. Now, do I think that the encryption alone would be a reason to move away? Not necessarily, but it really does have this very structure that's very much about databases and tables, which is great if you think in spreadsheets, not so great if you speak or you think in kind of a more lateral way, and I'll explain that in a second. So I ended up switching to Obsidian, and I ended up going deep into the Zettelkasten approach, which kind of looks to turn each thought you have into a single note, and then you join together those notes to form like an argument. It's great for creating content. And I still use Obsidian today. I think Obsidian is a fantastic product. And if I had literally any reason to pay for it, I would buy it. But I have no reason. I do not want to sync my notes. I don't want to publish my notes. I can't really pay for it, but I can recommend that you try it because it is really good. And the reason why I really liked Obsidian is because naturally the way I think is in mind maps. Every single video, this is the mind map for this video, I create a mind map. Every single time I'm planning something new, mind map. Any single time I'm just trying to figure something out, it's all mind maps. It's mind maps all the way down. And that's because with a mind map, you can take something big and break it down, but you're not limited to a structure. So if you're writing a note and let's say you've got a big topic with a single bullet point at the top, you then tab in to get more bullet points and then you write it hierarchically. Doesn't really work for the way I think because as you can see, my brain doesn't really think hierarchically, it thinks spatially as well. So I will connect two different areas together. I will spatially put something between 2 points if it applies to both. So I think it allows me to be a lot more kind of open in the way I approach stuff. And when it came to Obsidian, the major reason why I switched was because of their mind map. You can view your notes as this graph view, and it's really great for seeing connections you wouldn't normally have seen. And I'll use an example. You have topic A and topic B. Topic A is connected to topic B in some way. Then you introduce topic C. Topic C doesn't really connect to topic A, it only connects to topic B. But you can see that connection between A and C that is indirect through B. And that's really important when you're starting to build a knowledge base rather than building distinct notes, because you want to go cross-site scripting as a big topic is really related to injection type vulnerabilities, because if you're looking and you see an O text field, you should be thinking, okay, reflected XSS, SQL injection potentially. You are thinking, okay, there is an empty box here. What do I fill it with? These kinds of payloads. And this is why I think Obsidian kind of wins for me, because it's got this knowledge base centric approach. Now, it doesn't really matter what exactly you use to do this. This one that's grey is linking your thinking, and the one that's white here is a Zettelkasten Zettel. So a knowledge-based centric approach means that my notes are personal to me. I've chosen which vulnerabilities I want to record, what pieces of research or blog posts interest me, and I'm connecting those together. My notes are short, and most importantly, they're actionable. They focused on context. In what context will I need this big list of XSS payloads? Which context will I need API hacking tools? Because they're two very different contexts, but I want my notes to be able to effectively split that out. And the way that a lot of these knowledge-based centric approaches work is they use a flat structure. So instead of having folders and like hierarchy, instead you try and capture when will I need this next. So for hacking, there's one really clear thing, which is what are the signs of this vulnerability? If you see an ID, you should be looking for IDORs, full stop. If you see a text box which has reflected input, you should be testing for XSS. And it means you can very quickly do these kind of like litmus tests for different vulnerabilities very quickly and make sure that you're not investing a ton of time on an application that has middleware to stop all XSS attacks. Other ways you can do this, you can sort it by technology. So you're looking at maybe a React front end, you're looking at a mobile app. You can then bring all this together and see every single note that has to do with mobile apps. Doesn't matter what they cover, maybe they're about mobile apps APIs, maybe they're about Firebase, databases, whatever. The flat structure means that they're all given the same importance instead of having a very strong vulnerability type. No. And especially if you look at some of the best hackers, when they actually do their write-ups, you'll see that most people hack very chaotically. A lot of people really don't do a really complex this is everything I know about XSS, they're acting on instinct a lot of the time. And these knowledge-based centric approaches can help you develop that rather than trying to fit all of hacking into a nice little box, because it's not going to work. And kind of the second benefit for me is that I can use it to make videos. If I've read some really interesting research, maybe I've actually tried hacking something, I can actually use that and talk about it very easily in a video and combine things together really easily. Now, when I'm taking notes while actually hacking, I use Burp. And the way I use Burp is what I will do is I will go and label my repeater tabs by functionality. So when I'm hacking something, let's say a social media app, I will find out what exactly I need to do to, say, post on that social media app, especially for where there's a few different functionalities. So maybe you post something, you like it, you repost it, you can pin it. That's all like post related. I'll then have a separate one for account stuff. So I will have edit my account, follow somebody new, unfollow somebody, and I'll see what those requests look like and start to build up kind of a process. And this is really important for hacking business logic errors, because when you're hacking business logic errors, which are some of the vulnerabilities that are the hardest to automate, you're often thinking about how the data flows through the application and how you can break that flow in some way. Now, there's a lot of alternatives for the two tools that I use. So a lot of people love checklists. I think if you're doing pen testing, doing a checklist is really helpful because it helps you work through an application methodically. It doesn't offer necessarily a lot of flexibility. So you might have maybe like a main checklist, a recon checklist. You might have then a separate checklist for maybe you found an API. There's an API checklist now. But in terms of getting coverage, it's really helpful. Some people like plain text. You don't always need to have notes that are really visual. A lot of people just want somewhere to throw things in. A lot of people kind of use chaos in the sense they have a lot of different tools that all use different things and they use it in different ways. Some people like Notion because with Notion you can have quite a lot of structure and you can start to build dashboards. I think Notion's dashboards are really some of the biggest benefits of that tool, especially if you are changing how you view your data, whether or not you want a Kanban board or a table. You can very easily switch between the two and see things in different lights. Really helpful, for example, for me for making videos because I can then have everything to one video and I can put it in a Kanban board and say doing, done, not started. A lot of people like Cherry Tree, very plain text, walk down. A lot of people like mind maps. You'll see these a lot on social media because they are so bright and so visual. So you'll often see the ultimate XSS mind map. Here is every XSS payload and how I hunt for them. And a lot of people like to use paper. And I really want to say, just because I'm presenting my setup, which is Obsidian, and using Burp for notes, you really don't have to, and certainly you don't have to swear loyalty to one of these. You can use whatever you want for note taking. There is nothing in particular. So thinking about my goals for hacking notes. So while I am taking notes while I'm hacking, my kind of end goal here is to record things like IDs or endpoints I'll need later, either because they might potentially be vulnerable or they might be potentially helpful in, okay, I've got multiple accounts, what are their cookies? What are the IDs associated with those two accounts, especially if I'm testing like cross-organization IDORs, because that gets really complex with the amount of different accounts you need at different permission levels, looking at different organizations, it can be a lot. Really, the kind of format of this is just plain text. So the top one here is an application called Tot. It sits in your menu bar and lets you take notes. That's it. That's the whole thing. And I'll just copy and paste things into there. The one at the bottom is, of course, Burp, and it's labeling those tabs, as I said before. And my kind of requirements here is really to link that high-level functionality to the individual requests. So, for example, if you're looking at an e-commerce application, a single functionality to you as a human might be to buy a product. But in the actual application itself, that involves seeing a product, adding it to your cart, checking out your cart, filling in your address details, setting up the payment information, the payment confirmation coming back from the third party. There's quite a lot of steps there. And it's really important to be able to link these together, because that can say, okay, can I bypass the payment step? Can I add other products without somebody noticing? Can I make this order belong to somebody else? So it's all about keeping those high-level functionalities to the individual requests you make. Then we've got keeping in track for multiple IDs. If you ever do any IDOR testing, you will get so many IDs, especially if it's a complex enterprise software. You are going to be surrounded by IDs. And so actually having a place to put them and say, this is account 1, this is account 2, this is my low privileged account, this is my high privileged account, this is my organization, it's really helpful to just replace IDs when you see them. Another key requirement is being able to come back to it later. One of the things that I'm actually really bad at is, because I hack in bursts, I'll spend a few hours on one target. I'll spend a few hours on one target, and then, because at the moment I'm using the free version of Burp, there's a few reasons why I'm using the free version of Burp at the moment, but it's mainly for YouTube stuff. I can't save my progress. So instead, I have to try and figure out how to keep track of that in a notebook, for example, like a physical notebook. This really doesn't have to be digital. I mean, having a little notebook next to your computer whenever you work, huge help. Sticky notes, huge help. Whenever I'm doing things, whenever I'm hacking, I'll often have a piece of paper next to me because it's just helpful. Do you want to just take a quick note? Yeah, piece of paper. Excellent. Okay, so then we have knowledge-based notes. So really what you want from your knowledge base is a searchable note system that you can use while hacking. You want to very quickly be able to figure out what vulnerabilities to test for and which ones aren't worth looking for. And what format that goes in is completely up to you. Is that links? Is that just bullet points? Is that like full-blown note? For me, one of the big requirements is searchability. So I do have an all-digital system. I want something flexible so I can attach lots of different ways of presenting the same information. If it's a GitHub repository word list, if it's a write-up, if it's a disclosed report, I want that flexibility to choose what I actually want to attach to that note, to allow me to store my previous findings as well as my notes. So quite often the best hackers will become a specialist in one vulnerability, or maybe a few different vulnerabilities, but they tend to trend towards specialism. So being able to look at your previous findings and note and say, okay, this is what I'm looking for, this is what I found previously, can be a huge benefit in getting started very quickly on a new target. And also to have some organization. So I could look up the different classes of vulnerability if I wanted to. Now, I want to have a flat structure because I don't want the overwhelming hierarchy. I want it to be more like every vulnerability is the same, but certainly by having I want to look for SQL injection, or I know I want to search for SQL injection, being able to just bring up all my notes to do with it. Why do I use Obsidian? So I really like Obsidian. It's a very flexible note-taking application. So it looks like this. Essentially what you can do is you have your notes along the side. Everything is a markdown file, so you can have links, you can have titles, you can have all that structure. You can have folders if you do want to have a hierarchical approach. You can add attachments in the form of screenshots. It's super flexible. And like I said before, I also really like the graph view for seeing how notes are connected. The other thing you have on the side here is the links between notes. You can very quickly get that up. I really love Obsidian. I think it has, if you're a visual person, like if you're a visual thinker, this represents how you think probably a lot more than something like a Notion database does. Unless you're a developer. Maybe you do think in databases if you're a developer. I've got a full video on how I use Obsidian, or how I used Obsidian. I'm not really going to go too much into it, but it is a really good application. It's free. So because I know people are going to ask, here are some Obsidian plugins that I recommend. Breadcrowd allows you to build more distinct relationships between notes. You can have a parent and a child. You can have a sibling note. So you have your north, south, your east, west. Outliner lets you move bullet points around really easily and comes with keyboard shortcuts. Data view lets you treat Obsidian like Notion and have like databases. URL interselection allows you to just select a word or phrase and then Control V will make it into a link rather than deleting it and replacing it with your link. Recent files let you see a list of your current files, and I use the Readwise plugin to get data from other applications. So thank you very much, everybody, for listening to my note-taking summary. Hopefully this has been useful, and hopefully this will help you develop your own note-taking systems. Do you use something else completely different? Please do share it in the comments. There really isn't a right way to take notes, and being able to have all these different note-taking systems, you're probably not the only one who benefits from your note-taking system. Otherwise, I will see you all in the next video. Bye everyone.